Great to have you. Thanks for being here. I'll get straight into it. Vitika, let's talk about how Taj, in particular, benefits from the relationship with the Indian soft power and nation brand.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. So if you look at India as a country, it's of course a country which is very high on soft power, and understandably so. We've been a land of diverse religions, diverse regions, and I think any community which intrinsically is diverse has to rest a lot on soft power. When we look at Taj, which belongs to the hospitality sector, the sector per se is so dependent on soft power. So whether we talk about aspects like culture, heritage, influencing, even more softer aspects like care or warmth, the sector per se imbibes a lot of these soft power aspects. And therefore, for us, the marriage is natural. And as an industry leader, we are, of course, extremely humbled and honored to. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but we are about 90 plus hotels in 70 plus locations. And the first Taj hotel was built way back in 1903. So technically, Taj happened even before India's independence happened. And there's a beautiful story around it, which is, of course, that our founder, Mr. Jamshedji Nusarwanji Tata, wanted to bring the best of the globe to India and wanted to showcase the best of India to the globe. And that's how this beautiful hotel was built, which still exists, and I'm sure many of you have visited it. So for us as an industry leader and someone who's defined and continues to redefine the hospitality sector, I think it's very important to uphold these aspects of soft power. So if we talk about all the properties that we have, they of course pay tribute to the beautiful culture and heritage of the country. If we look beyond the brick and mortar structures and we talk about the culture that is so critical to hospitality as a sector and is intrinsically built in India, there's a beautiful phrase in Sanskrit, Helen, which is Atiti Devo Bhava, which actually means that guest is God. And Sanskrit, as I'm sure all of you are aware, belongs to centuries back. So it's not something that's got concocted now. So it's always been in Indian roots. And for us, that's an interesting phrase and a very, very significant one. And we hope to continue to live up to that. And therefore, that's how the culture of Taj is defined as well. So we talk about heritage, we talk about culture, we talk about the palaces of India, which is again an extremely important part of the whole history, heritage and legacy of India. We're very honored to have been managing some of these palaces for more than 50 years. And these are living legacies of India, which we, of course, again, very humbly manage and bring to the guests. So yes, I think when we talk about India as a soft power, we talk about the significance of soft power in the context of the hospitality sector. And we talk about a brand which is over 120 years old and has managed to not just survive, but thrive. Clearly, there's a lovely synergy between the trio, and we hope to keep living up to it.
Now, there's some very interesting points that we'll touch back on after that. It's particularly nice to hear it's part of living history, essentially. Helen, what's your experience? It's going to be slightly different given the Walpole Group's responsibilities, but how have you found it?
How have I found it? Fantastic. So Walpole it's a business body, represents the interests of more than 250 of Britain's finest brands. So from Burberry to Rolls-Royce to Harrods, I mean, the Macallan, the length and breadth of the country. And I can not just tell you how important soft power is to the brands, I can also put a value on it because it's the reason that those brands are worth £48 billion to the UK economy is entirely down to the extraordinary gift wrapping of British soft power and the global footprint that Britain has around the world. It's a desirable thing. And the brands really are just an incredible souvenir of your, it's kind of the fan merch of UK PLC or kind of the brand generally. So that's what I said. It's like 48 billion pounds says British soft power is alive and well.
But I mean, Walpole was set up in 1990, about 30 years ago now. If there was this wealth of British excellence in luxury and soft power and things like that, what is the need for an organisation like Walpole?
Well, in the same way as if you're on a dating website, you wouldn't say, I've got a great sense of humour and I'm really pretty, because that would just be, you need somebody else to say that for you, really, don't you? So, and I think there is sometimes an unhelpful modesty about British luxury brands. You know, they know they're good, but they sometimes take their beauty and extraordinary creativity and their power for granted a bit. And we have to stop being so British about being British. So I mean, Walpole does lots of things, but I think one of its greatest bits of value is that it's a cheerleader for British luxury. So we go around saying, look at this extraordinary trench coat. Look at this incredible new watch brand entirely made in Henley, taking on the Swiss watch giants. Look at this incredible bottle of whiskey. These are the things that we know you love, and they all come from Britain. So here we are doing the shouting for you. And, everybody needs friends, right, to have their back.
So do you find that the effect is mostly international, or is it domestic as well? So, Vitika.
The modesty impact?
No, the effect of soft power on the way you operate your business.
So I think it's an all-encompassing effect, and it plays for us both in the context of domestic travelers as well as international travelers. And in the context of international travelers, it is a sense of comfort, which comes, plus of course the fact that India is such a beautiful land with diversity in terms of landscapes and cultures and all of that. So it helps to imbibe that as well. But at the same time, also in the context of domestic, and I'm just going to actually take a slightly different angle on it, if I could. I think the whole aspect of soft power, and when we talk about heritage and culture, these are all manifestations that happen over centuries and centuries, but they also start impacting the DNA, so to say. And when we talk about Taj, which is a 120-year-old brand and has always operated in this environment, we have a lovely culture which is based on trust, awareness, and joy. And as flag bearers of Indian hospitality, we do believe that lands up playing a big role in terms of showcasing, reflecting, and imbibing India, both to international travelers as well as to domestic ones.
So actually, just to pick up on that, that's an interesting point. I mean, it is 120 years old. India, as you say, has changed a lot over those 120 years. How do you adapt the way the brand operates, or do you need to? Are you the ones that are driving the change in Indian perceptions, or are you just a passenger in the way that the country is changing?
So I think it's a combination of the yin of the traditional and the yang of the contemporary. It's very fascinating, but some of the core things never really change. So if I do want to bring a smile to a child, even today, I know exactly what would make him happy. And that's probably what also made him happy decades back. And I think some of these industries and some of these brands which have a purpose inherent within them abide by that core. So why I mention the yin and the yang is because for us it's very important to continue preserving that core, because that's what India is about and that's what Taj is about. At the same time, we need to keep adding layers, and I'm sure Helen would resonate with this as well, because a lot of other luxury brands do that as well. But you do not lose sense of your core, because that's what needs to be preserved, enhanced, and promoted. And then there are the layers that we add. So for example, if you talk about a lot of offerings that we've launched in the last 10 years, or even during COVID times, those are things which we have introduced into the market basis what the customer was asking us to do. So we, of course, have a very keen eye on the customer, and depending on their changing needs, we add these. But I do believe that the core is something that needs to be protected and kept intact and enhanced, and not necessarily changed in a very, very dynamic manner. Offerings, value propositions, yes, but not the core.
Sure. And Helen, how do you see adapting to that change? How do you see that work?
I think there's a real, I would concur. If you've got an enormous heritage and history like the UK has, you can't look backwards. You must always be looking forwards, and that really, I think, a lot of that does rest on the brands. I mean, British soft power. If we're thinking about the kind of royal family and kind of culture and heritage and of course brands and kind of art and literature, all those things that go out to make it, is such a rich tapestry. It's also quite contradictory because it's simultaneously kind of palaces and punks. It's, like the recent Burberry campaign, you had Vanessa Redgrave, one of our most, kind of the grande dame of British acting, but also Shy Girl in that campaign, and Lennon Gallagher, the kind of offspring of the great Liam Gallagher, I think, or is it Noel's son? I can't remember. One of the Gallagher brothers from. So those things are interesting. You have to make it new all the time. You can't look backwards. You have to take the very best of the past and use it as a springboard for a new and interesting, relevant conversation all the time. And I think the reason that the UK is once again number 2 for soft power is because we are incredibly good at mining our past to create a new relevant future. So that would be, does that kind of answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it gets back to what people were saying earlier this morning, that it's really the businesses and the people that are driving the soft culture, the soft power of these nations, and not just politicians on the surface doing things day to day.
100%. I mean, sometimes the very comforting thing when you're going through a turbulent period in politics is to know that actually politics doesn't really register when we're thinking about soft power. It doesn't register for brands very much. The very refreshing but weird thing for me was the first trade mission we went on in New York to take British luxury brands, quite a lot of new and small luxury brands, to the US, biggest luxury goods market in the world. And I was it was mid-Brexit, I was kind of full of like, oh no, everybody hates us, it's going to be a nightmare. There was a kind of lot of gloom that we were talking, and literally nobody in the US had even really heard of Brexit. It was very sobering. And the ones that had went, oh, we've got Trump, we're kind of quits. So there was this and that was a real eye-opener for me, because I thought this is, soft power is something, as you say, that it's built and built and built and built over many, many hundreds and thousands of years even. And so the little bits that you get obsessed with don't register. You have to see yourself as other people see you. And I think if I'm thinking of the value that that luxury brands, in the UK luxury brands get from that gift wrapping of UK soft power, it's absolutely about what is it that somebody in the US or somebody in the UAE or somebody in Singapore might think about the UK. What values are they seeing? What lens are they seeing it from? Because they're certainly not seeing it from the kind of little microscopic lens that I have when I'm crying into my tea about the loss of tax-free shopping or something.
I mean, it's a very good point, and it's going to be one of my later questions, is how to challenge preconceptions and what people already think about your nation and what that might therefore hold for you. Do you lean into those preconceptions? Do you try and change those preconceptions to be a more positive attribute that you want to, extol?
I think you've got to do both, right? I mean, I think the great thing, from my point of view, as the number one cheerleader for British luxury, is that those perceptions are generally strong and positive. I mean, we really saw that in, obviously it was incredibly sad last year when the Queen died, but we saw this kind of global kind of renewal of what people felt about that kind of long tail. But you must always be moving forward. You've got to always kind of reinvent things. You've got to push people. And you've got to create, luxury is about storytelling. You need to fall in love with the, I fell in love with the fact that my suit was made by the first ever female tailor on Savile Row. This felt like an amazing thing to kind of go and worship at her shrine and say, I need the most British suit made for me, possibly with these incredible skills. I mean, that would have been unthinkable even 10 years ago, that there could have been a female tailor on Savile Row. So I think you have to always be challenging those perceptions, and then, as brands, we've got to be out there telling that story, the modern story of British luxury and Britain generally.
You've been talking about lots of different British luxury sectors, tailoring being the most recent one. Vitika, you were saying that the history of Taj and the history of the Tata Group has been one of opening up India to various new sectors. So to move things on from the benefit that you both have received from the soft power of the nations that you operate in, how do nations benefit from private enterprise?
So am I audible now? Okay. So I love the pun that's operating here. I'm clearly too soft, and I've needed reinforcements. I'm now going to try and speak a little more loudly. So I think when we talk about India and we talk about the context of the group that I belong to, which is Tata Group, it's a group which is very, very intertwined not only into the social fabric of the country, but actually the economic growth. I don't know how many of you are aware, but the Tata Group was founded in 1868.
Wow.
And that is a time when India was very different from what it looks like right now. And we had a very visionary founder who had 4 goals. He actually wanted to open the first iron and steel manufacturing unit in the country. He wanted to set up the first hydroelectric power plant in the country. He wanted to bring an Indian institution of science in the country. And he wanted to, thankfully for us, open a beautiful hotel. So these were the 4 goals that he set for himself. And if you look at each of those 4, clearly the results or the benefits of this would not be reaped for many decades to come. So I think that's where the group and the Tata brand has played a very intrinsic role in what we often call nation building. And so we have commercial brands, we have nation brands, and then there are always some of these brands that have played a very vital role in the economic and the social growth of a country. And of course, the Tata Group is one such brand. So in our context, and of course it didn't end there. So we've pioneered multiple other industries. So I think the whole intent there was to recognize the needs of India, not just from an economic perspective, but also from a cultural and a social perspective, and see how the group could really add to it and build from it. Just a very interesting anecdote. So Taj Mahal Palace, which is there in Mumbai, and I would definitely encourage all of you, if you're ever visiting Mumbai, to see that place. It's, like I said, 120 years old. Was actually built, and we introduced things like jazz to the country. We introduced cabaret. We had the first licensed bar, so the bar in the hotel actually carries license number 1. We had the first restaurant, so our restaurant carries license number 1. We had to flow in chefs from outside because we wanted it to be world class. In terms of the entire architecture, you have to see it to believe it. It still stands strong. And it was actually described as a resplendent debut by New York Times and the best hotel on the east of the Suez. So sorry, to circle back to what you were saying. So I think for the Tata brand or the Tata Group and for Taj, we have genuinely partnered with the country. And I think that's the reason why there is so much high equity that we have within that market. Because we've genuinely partnered, whether it's a public-private partnership or whether it's partnering with the communities. We actually started mills way back, I think, in 1897. And we introduced things which were not even mandated by law in the West at that point of time. So we had things like Provident Fund. We had creches in our mills because the mills used to use a lot of women employees. So we had creches to take care of the little ones. We had medical health care at that point of time. Again, it was not mandated by law. We had separate dispensaries for women. We actually had a maternity benefit way back then. So yes, I think when we talk about India as a nation and we talk about the Tata Group or we talk about Taj, we are extremely honored and humbled, but I think, yes, we're all intertwined into each other.
So I suppose that, the talk of public and private partnership sounds very formal. I suppose the question is how hands-on should governments be in building enterprise and also fostering luxury brands in an economy that, the nation of Britain is built, and how that should work. So obviously, public-private partnership has benefited Taj and the Tata Group immensely. Do you feel now that perhaps you should be left to get on with your own devices?
So if you talk about tourism and related and ancillary industries, it almost represents 8% of India's GDP, which is definitely significant. And I think the attempt and the efforts by all the public institutions have been beautifully complemented by private players. And when I say private players, I'm of course representing Taj, but if I could take the liberty of saying even others. I think tourism for India has always been significant, and there is great support that one gets in terms of promoting India as a tourist destination, and it works beautifully. So when we partner on initiatives like Dekho Apna Desh, which when translated to English means come see your own country, or when we partner in initiatives like Think India, Think Taj, I think everyone is working towards an aligned and a larger and a common goal, which is to A, push India as a tourist destination, and B, also to talk about Indian hospitality. And there's a slight line of distinction between the two. So when we talk about India as a destination, we're of course talking about what India brings to the table in terms of culture, heritage, art, and everything. But when we talk about Indian hospitality, we're actually talking about, if I may borrow a phrase, more of the soft power of the country, which is what is the secret sauce of this Indian hospitality. And we actually often, in the context of Taj, describe it as soulful indulgence, because we do believe that India as a country has a lot of soul, and Taj as a brand has a lot of soul. And that's that culture that we take even when we go and operate in global destinations. And we have a lovely property here, which actually was the first, I think it was. It was the first hotel to be opened in London by an Indian company again. So so the 51 Buckingham Gate in St. James Court, way back in 1980-82, was the first Indian hotel in London.
Fascinating. Helen, how do you see central involvement? Do you think that there should be more funding from the government, or do you think that there should be more central organisations that help you out, or should you just be, again, your brands within Walpole, should they just be left to their own devices?
Well, look, it's quite a codependent relationship, isn't it? So because I think all of the brands that we represent are out there doing the work on behalf of the country. Every single product that's sold overseas, every single visitor that comes to the UK and experiences our brands every brand is an emissary for the country globally. So I think they work hard on behalf of the country, and I think the respect and the recognition is due. But actually the government is incredibly supportive with things like the Great Campaign, which I think is an absolutely tremendous recognition of a role that the government can play internationally with supporting all the things that are really interesting about British business particularly, and about brands and about the creative industries and those things. I think I would say that government should be supportive, but they shouldn't get in the way, because these are brands that are very, very, very keen to maximise the amount of money they can make for the country. And if I think about that £8 billion that British Luxury sends to the Exchequer every year, that's a third of all nurses' salaries, and all the brands want to do is make more of that. But when you have something like the abolition of tax-free shopping, which is a real incentive for international visitors to come here and to buy, and it was just a kind of wrong-headed, kind of slightly mad move that misunderstood the role of a tax incentive in terms of the wider economy. It's not just about retail, it's about the whole ecosystem of culture, of hospitality, the entire country. It's actually, I shan't get on my soapbox about it, it's not for today, but we had a £30 billion high-end visitor economy in this country in 2019. That could have tripled by 2030, and I think we're still trying to do that, but to do it without the legislative framework which allows us to compete with continental Europe is kind of wrong-headed. So I would say government super supportive. I love the Great Campaign. So many good things, but don't get in the way of these brands trying to do a great job for the country by doing silly things like that, Res. Sorry.
That makes, thank you.
Bring back tax-free shopping.
So one of the other things as well, so you mentioned the Great Campaign, and we did some work with them many years ago, and they said one of their biggest challenges is funding, the ability to promote Britain abroad. How do you see the relationship between brands and nations in that regard? Perhaps, Helen, you can start.
Well, I think it is back to that codependence, isn't it? Because brands spend a lot of money advertising their goods and services overseas, and we do lots of. We're in New York. I mean, actually, Walpole itself is in New York next week to talk about, coming to the country and staying in the hotels, spending money, going to see everything, all that kind of stuff. So I think it is difficult when things that are really great, like the Great Campaign, have insufficient funds, but then actually the brands are there doing that job as well. They're very clear that part of their success depends on the continued soft power of the UK. So I think they're happy to spend the money making the country look good in every way it can.
But are they happy about your brand spending the money to make the country look good and saving
Is
them
the
their
government
budgets?
happy about that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, what's not to like?
No, absolutely. And Peggy Liu was saying earlier that China's got a bit of a problem in that they are doing exceptionally good things in terms of sustainability and sort of various of those attributes, and yet they aren't marketing it as as well as they could. And it struck me that responsible business seems to be one of the best ways of extolling those virtues internationally and getting the country known for those things. I mean, Tata seems like the absolute prime candidate for responsible business. Do you ever feel that the example that you're setting is difficult to follow, difficult to live up to?
So I don't think there's anything particularly right or wrong about it. I think it's a philosophy that one believes in. And if you talk about the Taj, again, we do believe that our actions speak louder than words. And therefore, we are extremely reticent about talking of a lot of good initiatives that we do. Somewhere last year, we actually launched Pathya, which is our ESG++ brand. We've been doing sustainability, whether it's across people or planet or heritage or preservation, for decades and decades and decades. But yes, we do believe that, and like I said, that's just a philosophy that we adhere to. There's nothing really right or wrong about it. But yes, as a philosophy, we do believe that we will let our actions speak louder than words. And the good part is that I think with the proliferation of media and the age that we do live in, I think information is definitely not, a scarce or a rare commodity anymore. So people are able to see what you're doing more than what you're saying. And honestly, I think for us, for Taj as a brand, it's held us in good stead because we are more about acts and less about ads. And and it's beautiful because people see what we're doing more than hear us talk about it. And it's actually quite fascinating because, God forbid if you do have a social media crisis, it's always very interesting to see the kind of comments we have. Because even before we can come and explain what went wrong, it's beautiful to see people comment that, this is the Taj. I'm sure this didn't happen. You're mistaken. We'll figure out what happened. They'll come back to you. So I think it's beautiful because, and like I said, it's a philosophy we've had. But because we're so into doing things and we do things genuinely because it's a part of a value system and not because we wanted to have a ramification or we don't want to leverage it in any sense. And with social media and all, I think all this authenticity and genuineness does land up being actually in the end. So yeah, so nothing right or wrong about it, but yes, it's a philosophy that one has.
So quality brands give that feeling of trust of both the brand and the
Build
nation.
that trust, yes. The feeling is always a byproduct, but the efforts that the brand takes in building that trust, I think that's important.
Okay. So slight change of tack here. We had quite a feisty discussion earlier about the use of media in building soft power. We had a traditional view of established media, film, TV, and all that sort of stuff. And we had the social media, more modern view of how quickly things can change and what people are interested in now and all that sort of stuff. How do you use both? Is one going to replace the other? When you deal with British brands and promoting British brands, do you think traditional media is going to go out the window, or do you think that it's still something that you need to pay attention to?
I think it's really, I slightly think that there's an artificial distinction between traditional media and new media and social media. What British luxury brands love is a platform on which they can tell their absolutely enchanting stories about, I don't know, the weaver in Harris that goes to make the suit that then is then sold by Dunhill. That's not a very good example of an enchanting story, but there is some really, every single brand has these things. And I think the incredible thing about social media and Instagram particularly is that it's a beautiful platform it's a little window into under the bonnet of luxury. How to kind of see the person that has made that Rolls Royce, the person that's made the whiskey. Having that in the palm of your hand, whether you're in Qatar or in Toronto, it doesn't really matter. It's a great gift. A storytelling platform, whether it's Harper's Bazaar or Vogue, or the Daily Telegraph, or the Wall Street Journal, or whether it's Instagram and maybe even some funny TikToks, is brilliant. Your latest speaker, Ed Vaizey, called British luxury a global calling card for Britain. So from our point of view, to be able to take that message, that global calling card to people's hands before we've ever got them to just come and feel the cashmere, feel the suiting, is great. And sorry.
Presumably you use a lot of influencers as well to attract people to your hotels.
So we're again a little fortunate here. We do land up hosting a lot of heads of state, a lot of celebrities, a lot of influencers. And thankfully for us, they do talk positive about us. So, I think the relationship is not so much about us using them, but about them genuinely complimenting us, which is a lovely space to be in. But yes, by virtue of having, Taj is actually probably one of the largest luxury hotel brands in the world. I know there are a few who are more than 90 properties, but I don't think there are many. So Taj, when you are present across 90 plus properties and 70 plus locations, I guess it's a little difficult to miss us. So yes, we do land up hosting a lot of them, and it's always a pleasure. We also get a lot of user-generated content, and which is why we love social media. And I think the deal with social media is that it's like Helen rightly said, it's of course a medium of storytelling. But more than that, I think it's also a lovely way to interact. And so it's not about what I'm saying about my brand, and it's not even about what they're responding back to me about my brand, but it's the conversations that they're having amongst each other.
Yeah, I think to eavesdrop on that is amazing.
It's just beautiful. And I think for any brand like Taj, which is so human, and so genuine and authentic, it's beautiful. So there are times when we have slipped, and we have very, very humbly admitted our mistake. I think it's only human to make mistakes. So no qualms about doing that, and of course then rectified it. But it's beautiful to just see those conversations happening.
Do you find that it accelerates the change in perceptions? Because, Helen, we were talking before this about how Bond has been the 60-year gift that keeps on giving, which presumably is what has caused Britain to have quite a stable soft power even through a difficult time. Does the use of social media accelerate any changes? Would it mean that some of the more superficial changes that happen day to day have a bigger effect?
I think it's helpful in that way that you can have an accelerated kind of journey for a message. I'm thinking about, we've talked about sustainability a little bit earlier. Now, I think we would say that sustainability and luxury are one and the same, because it's about, in the context of British luxury, we say it's only by doing, you can only do well if you also do good. So there is a kind of responsibility that comes with that level of quality that you're offering, the promise you're offering people, the reputation. And I think all the conversations that we might put in the sustainability bucket, which includes diversity and inclusion and working practices and the transparency that you need to have as a brand with a solid reputation right now, to be able to talk about that in an accelerated way has been super, super helpful. Because one of the things that we know is that 60% of luxury customers would choose not to buy a luxury brand if they felt there were ESG problems around it. So there's a reason, there's a reason for doing that.
Is that just what they said, or is that actually what they did?
No, that's an intention. It's not a response, because we would say that most luxury brands have got very, very quickly on top of this agenda. But also being able to have an accelerated conversation about things they've been doing forever, like Johnsons of Elgin, the biggest textile manufacturer in the UK, producer of extraordinary cashmere for some of the world's most famous luxury brands as well as themselves, have had incredible standards of production and kind of water usage and all those things since they started their business 250 years ago, but never really talked about it. So it's back to that thing about being bold and not being afraid to shout about the good things. And social media lets you do that. And hear back, crucially, what other people are saying about you.
So do you think that, do you both think that the most important thing is the ability to shout and promote yourself?
No, I think it's the ability to listen, actually. I think it's a really beautiful storytelling tool, as I said, but as completely as Vitika said, it's to hear the conversations that people are having. Because back to my point about that revelation I had when I went to New York, it's not what you're saying about yourself so much as what other people are saying about you, but knowing how to listen to what other people are saying about you. On the whole, really good things, but to keep an ear on the bad, because you need to either tackle that if it's wrong or fess up and change it.
Interesting. So final point, not final point. Earlier today, we were talking about how the UAE has entered the top 10 of the soft power for the first time. Oh, is my microphone gone? There it is. And how Ukraine has been shooting up as a result of higher awareness and things like that. UAE, to focus on that, obviously has a very large appetite for luxury goods, but there aren't a huge number of luxury brands that have grown out of the UAE yet. I know that you don't want to give away your secrets, but what is it that the UK is doing that others might look to say, oh, that's an asset that I can replicate?
Well, I think the dominance of the creative industries and the advantage of the power of Britain's creative industries can't be underestimated. So I think film, TV, books, theatre, plays, any ways that you can get people to engage in your story, in your culture, those are things that are super helpful. I mean, we couldn't, if there wasn't a constant advertising campaign going on for Britain from TV and film, I'm not sure where we'd be right now. So that would be my top 10 tip. Use your creative industries, because it's super powerful.
So actually, if I could, so we were just, so India is an interesting example in that context, because of course we've got all branded luxury players who have made a beginning in the market, but they're yet to achieve that scale. And that is primarily because India as a market is not new to luxury. We've just had a very different type of luxury. So if you talk about Indian craftsmanship, or if you talk about the Indian artisans, who have often created stuff out of beautiful fabrics like silk, which is available in the country, or precious stones which are available in the country, they've always been there for us. So I think, of course, I'm kind of coming in between, but it's an interesting polar opposite situation, which is to say that the market is not new to luxury at all. We've had luxury artisans, and we've had royalty in our country, and they've been artisans in their courts. If you were to visit any of our palaces at Taj, you will see chandeliers which were made by artisans over 6 months, and that used to be shipped to these royal palaces. But so while there are a lot of homegrown, actually I wouldn't even use that word in quotes. I think India is very used to luxury, but yes, not the typical face of luxury that of course the Western world sees.
Yes.
I think the word that's been noticeably absent from this discussion is authenticity. And
Goes without saying, that's
Well, exactly.
why.
I
It's
mean,
just inherent.
Both of you are talking about the heritage and all of the assets that come with building these brands, but it is therefore easier to do because it all ties back to what was already there, and you're just accentuating the key attributes that are unique to whichever nation it is. Now, just before we finish, I have a slightly controversial question. Is Jaguar Land Rover British or Indian?
Well, I think we're going to claim it for both, right? You know, because without Tata's extraordinary investment in that, we wouldn't have those thousands of people employed in the Midlands. We wouldn't have you know, 3 incredible marks around the world going around being that global calling card for Britain. So I think that's another example of soft power. It's the collaboration between countries that have a long history and understand each other and want to work together. So I'm going to talk about Range Rover, Land Rover, Jaguar as British brands, but the fact that they're owned by Tata has just allowed them to turbocharge themselves, forgive the pun.
So actually, I would say neither, because I do believe that these are brands that need to operate in a global environment. And for any brand to operate in a global environment, it's important to let go of a little bit and imbibe a little of the region they go to. And we have seen a lot of global brands succeed and a lot of global brands fail when they've not been able to get that balance. So ownership, legal entities are of course extremely critical, and I'm not undermining that. But I think there's a universal truth that brands do exist in the minds of the customer. So the day, you know, someone on the streets of China vis-a-vis the streets of London vis-a-vis the streets of Mumbai can say that's my brand, I think that's the day we have hit jackpot.
I think that's a really interesting point to finish on, is that sometimes soft power in the nation related to the brand is not what's necessary. It's using all of those different attributes to be a global brand.
Yeah.
Great, excellent. Well, thank you very much to my panelists. That's a fascinating discussion. And I believe do we have a coffee break now? Oh, David will do the introduction to our next speakers. Thank you very much.